180 and we're at the speed down to 2500.
Yep, point wherever you reduce speed to 180.
BlackBox.
All right, so Ian has done the click, which means that we're taping. We're live, right, guys?
Watch the timer.
We're on watch the timer. Noah told me so. We're on a strict timeline today, counselor.
All right.
So
I bill by the hour anyway.
Oh, God.
6-minute increments.
6 minutes. Oh, I'm in trouble. So this is going to be an expensive podcast for me today. So, hey, welcome to the show. Kenny Porter here, KP's BlackBox, with a actually good friend of mine. You can't say that about many attorneys who you also in the same breath call them a friend. So I'm privileged to call you a friend, Nat.
That's good.
So Nat's been an attorney of mine in corporately for a long time, got me out of a lot of mess corporately over and over again. So
Yep.
I appreciate you, man. Thanks for coming on the show today.
Oh, I'm happy to be here. Excited to finally catch up with everything that you got going on. And, you asked me to be on a podcast, and I show up, and it's not us talking into an iPhone. So
That's yeah, we try to take it up a notch. So
yeah.
This really came about. My son-in-law, Ian, who's behind the big monitor over there and kind of running and producing this thing. This has been a passion of mine all the way back to 2012 when I reopened my financial services firm, and I had this educational platform that I wanted to put out, and it's still in my heart, still there, still want to do it. It just takes a lot of time, but misery and bad things that happen sometime, you have to look in the chaos for the opportunity, because opportunity is always there. Well, what happened when COVID hit was the workshops that we were doing in our financial services business. We'd go to restaurants and we'd do the meet and greet and feed people and try to get them to come have a conversation with us after having a meal and having a conversation with them at a seminar or workshop. That got shut down because of COVID. Mm-hmm. And so we were like, well, man, we've got some idle time on our hands. And so I said, well, let's get this BlackBox thing rolling again. Let's get the podcast up and running. And Ian's industry, he's in the movie business, they were shut down. So
Right.
The opportunity was just ripe for us to be able to do this. So we really went full force into it first of the year 2020. And then by March, we were like in it. And I'm like, me, if I'm going to do something, I want to do it at a high level. And so I really made a big commitment. I'm like, if I'm not paying for a workshop, I can take that same money and invest in some computers and some mics and some cameras and start recording shows. And so I don't know if you remember back, I tried to do this in 2012 with
Yep.
KP's BlackBox and
Yep.
had you recorded then, but I didn't have the framework to really understand how to do it at a high level. And now when you put good people around you who are smarter than you are,
Yeah.
it works really, really well. So we got it off the ground, and I'm glad to have you on the show today. So thanks for coming and joining us.
No, happy to be here for sure.
Yeah, cool. One of the things we do, I was telling you off camera, is before we get too deep in the show, I always like to honor our military. And so we like to do a little toast. We're trying to get Blue Label or Johnny Walker to start sending us some bottles of Blue Label, because we're starting to get
Getting
low there.
Yeah.
And that's just been from the launch of the podcast. That's 3/4 gone from toasting our military. And myself, like you, in your legal practice, your law business, you have a significant number of military clients or past military clients.
Yeah.
So in our region, we touch a lot of people who have served in some capacity. So I'd like to just throw a little toast out to our military. Cheers.
Yeah.
So,
Cheers.
we're social distancing.
Yeah, we got it.
So let's give a toast to those guys. Thanks for your service,
That's good.
men and women of our
Yeah,
military.
we love. I mean, I love helping people that have been in the military. Having not been in the military myself, but as I said, my brother-in-law served in the Navy, and both grandfathers on each side served in World War II, and it's fun to help guys here, especially in like the Special Forces community. They're just getting out, and kind of like you, they're getting out and they're just sort of finally diving into the world of business,
right?
And they're, in a lot of cases, they're risk takers, and they're not the smartest business people, but they're willing to like take risks that your everyday person potentially wouldn't take.
Sometimes if you know too much, that can be a problem because then it creates indecisiveness. Whereas, dumb luck, I talk about this in gambling, that I'd rather be lucky than smart.
Right.
And business sometimes is a gamble, right? And what you're trying to do as a counselor is help them see their flanks, help them see their blind sides.
Yeah.
And that's what I'd like to talk to you about today in the world of business and legal advice. And, being there as one of those trusted advisors for the business owner and the business owner community. Super important. But, yeah, the military, what would you say if you looked at your practice between you and your partner, Mr. Gabe, Mr. McCoy?
Yeah.
How's he doing, by the way?
He's doing great. He's got, first baby finally, and
wow,
got a nice new house down in Norfolk, so he's
good
doing
for
right.
him. Well, Gabe, shout out to you, man. Congrats on the new baby. Well, hopefully it looks like mom, right?
Yeah.
That's right.
Right, yeah. She's doing well.
Just kidding, Gabe.
Well
Just kidding,
also.
man. That's awesome. Well, congrats, you guys. How long, Pierce McCoy? We started about the same time, somewhere around 2012, 13?
Yeah, so March of 2013 is where we sort of walked out the door of the practice that we were with. And, we started in an office that was roughly as big as the room we're in here.
Yeah.
And we had 2 desks facing each other just like this, and 2 monitors and 2 laptops, basically. And that's, a handful of relationships like you that we just felt people that trusted us, and we thought we'd give it a go at that point.
That's awesome, man. Well, that's that was March of 2013?
Yeah, March 2013.
Jeez, and then you think about March 2020, the COVID was full force and crazy. It's been a crazy year, right?
You just look back to this year. I was on vacation with my family down in Disney World, and I remember that's when the restrictions started to first start to hit. Yeah. And I'm lucky that my brother-in-law is a pathologist, so I was on a family text with him and some others, and he said, I think schools across the country are going to be closed by the end of the month. And that was like in the first week of March, and I remember...
You're probably like, come on, man, BS.
I was like,
you're full of crap.
You're crazy. But, luckily, we had a good... Our team, we got on the phone. I was down in Disney World on the phone saying, let's go remote. Like, let's go remote next week. Let's just do it. Like, let's rip the Band-Aid off. And Virginia, I think, shut down the end of March, so we went remote.
Sounds right, yeah.
Yeah, we went remote like the first or second week of March, which was great because we worked out a lot of the kinks in that first week or two right before a lot of our clients started to really shut down. And those were really hard conversations that we had with people. We started to develop we developed a furlough plan for a lot of employers that had to lay off, whether they whether they outright fire them, let them go. What do I do? How do I do this well? So we had to have a lot of really, really hard conversations early on, and this was before the PPP came out. That was a lifeline to everyone, and people didn't see that coming, and even if when it was coming, they just thought I'm never going to get it. Yeah. Everyone ended up getting it and more, but for the most part, it was a scary time to be a business owner, even for us. I mean, we were worried about our lines of credit. getting shut down.
Getting reeled in, yeah.
We maxed all those out, just stocked as much cash as we
Right.
could just to be ready. And we've all kind of come through it and learned to live with it. But
Yeah.
that type of uncertainty in business and 13 years of practicing law, I've never seen anything like. I've seen business owners in really scary moments, and you and I
we navigated a few of those,
walked
right?
through that, but I've never seen that sort of uncertainty that just touched every, and there's nobody was spared. There were few business owners that said, this doesn't affect me at all. It was the number that said that was minor in comparison.
Isn't it crazy? I mean, you think back, you look on that now, and if someone would have told you in 2019, hey, Nat, be prepared that your practice is going to move 100% remotely in March or April of 2020, and that you're going to be dealing with business owners over a pandemic. Mm-hmm. And you're going to be helping business owners navigate how to strategically lay employees off, but not fire them. I mean, these are good people. And, I remember President Trump, or maybe it was Vice President Pence, that had said, you didn't cause this. The Americans didn't cause this. And, President Trump with China.
Yeah.
It's China's fault. But it was, I think, the first time in American history that I can remember, even think back on, and I kind of pride myself on being a little bit of a history buff, that, our federal government actually stepped in and provided a social benefit that really did help a lot of businesses. Now, people have different opinions on how they did it and who got it and who should have got it and who shouldn't, and that'll be debated for years to come.
Yeah.
But had they not done something, I mean, we went from a market that was on fire, and even private markets that were on fire, meaning they were doing really well, to just the federal government shut the country down. Yeah. And it was a time that for most of us, even in my business, I wasn't sure what was coming next. Like our workshops, the reason I'm doing this podcast now is because our workshops were shut down. And I was like, well, I can't sit idle. I can't let the grass grow under my feet. Yeah. I need to be doing something that gets a message out, and a message of hope to entrepreneurs that, as we were saying off camera a few minutes ago, in chaos lies opportunity. So with your clients and this chaos of 2020, tell us some good stories, man. Tell us some things where things have been that could have ended poorly because of COVID, but have worked out.
Well, it's, I was helping a private school out who had, I think they had like 90 teachers. And right at the beginning of the pandemic, they called and they said, we think we got to let them all go. We think we got to lay them off. And
that's a trickle-down effect.
Yeah, and then you're probably going to lose, if you do come back the next year, you're probably going to lose them all. And just sitting in the room having that conversation of, how do we deal with this problem? How do we address this? I mean, I think some of the stories that have come out of it is business owners that have taken the opportunity to look at what they were doing differently. My firm, I can just sort of riff on we 2020 was supposed to be our year of harvest. Like, it's our 7th year. We have our
Jubilee.
Yeah. And we had all our projections, none of which we hit. I mean, we probably had a 25% drop in our collections March through June or July. And, it's kind of like something hits your business, and what do you do with it? How do you adapt to it? But I think what we've had happen is you have business owners now who have just chosen to look at their business differently. So I have a restaurant franchise that's seen everything. They have 2 locations in D.C., so they've been shut down not just because of the pandemic, but they've been shut down for protests. So they've had their walls boarded up, and they had to furlough employees. They had to let them go. But in that, he started doing meal kits, and he's sending meal kits all throughout D.C. and here locally, and he's looked at his business differently, and how are we more sustainable? How do we survive the 100-year pandemic that nobody expected? And I think what you're going to see is the economy just boom out of this, because it's taken people like you and I to look at their business differently and actually be a little bit more prepared, whether that's saving more, kind of like how I think September 11th had a similar effect on all of us, where you really take a look on, how do we prepare for the unexpected? How do we prepare for a terrorist attack? And it's been great that's the fun thing about what I do, is I get to sit with the business owner and really kind of dream about that.
Well, that's really what you and most legal professionals, attorneys, it's what you do for your clients, right? It's risk mitigation. You give them, here's the known risk, here's the unknown risk. How are we going to, and Donald Rumsfeld, back around 9/11, talked about the known knowns, the known unknowns, the unknown knowns.
Yeah.
And people thought he was crazy, but when you dissect, all the different risks that are out there, there are some who would have thought, who would have thunk that this pandemic was going to hit and disrupt our country the way it did. I remember hearing about it in January, that there was this, Chinese flu that had been, some speculate that it was created in a lab, some speculate it came from a bat. Doesn't matter where it came from.
Yep.
It's there. People were getting sick, and getting sick at different levels, and then, our national health organizations and global health organizations, I think, weren't prepared that this type of virus, it's a weird virus in that people's arms aren't falling off, and they're not turning into zombies, but it has done something to our country, Nat, that for me feels a little zombie-ish, right? Because people now are unsure, and so and people react differently. Some people go into a shell and go into deep depression and, just want to escape. And it's kind of that burning building scenario where some run in, some run out.
Yep.
And what it appears to me is that those that charge the fire, those that run in and just go, you know what, I'm going to die trying, excuse the pun, but I'm at least going to go for it. And if they're getting good counsel from folks like yourself, from attorneys who understand, who have a business mind, who are not only giving this advice, but you're living it out like a movie in the moment with them.
Yeah.
So, these people that have made it, do you see any distinction between the business owner mindset of the person who's just like, no failure, kind of that SEAL mentality where they're like, failure's not an option, versus the person who's been like, you know what, I'm just going to tap out, and this wasn't meant to be. What have you seen in the marketplace?
Well,
what's your gauge on where we're at as business owners and the mindset of business owners?
I think, as the advisor, it hasn't changed. The level of business activity really hasn't changed. People are still buying businesses. People, I think, realize that we're going to either learn to live with this. There's going to be a miracle cure. Now it looks like there's some vaccines, or the world's just going to look differently.
Yeah, you're going to take it. By the way, you're going to take the vaccine. You're on camera now. So
I think that, well, I don't get the flu shot. I think the last time I got the flu shot, I got sick.
That's what my father-in-law's a physician. I've been saying that to him for years now. Me neither. I don't like getting my flu shot, and I know there are going to be people who are going to hate on us for saying we don't get the flu shot.
I think with this, because my parents are getting older and being around them and having a sister and brother-in-law who are both doctors, I think I'm going to have no choice.
They're going to come at you pretty hard, right? But can I at least have the choice? Do you see, put your legal hat on for a minute. Do you see the government forcing people to take a shot?
No, I don't. I think that there's a spirit of independence, and you see it on both sides.
Yeah.
I mean, that's one of the great things about this country is that, everyone has that bent to them that nobody can really tell them what to do.
Yeah.
Well, at the end of the day, you can't really tell me what to do. And I think whether you're liberal or conservative, both sides have that, spirit about them, and hopefully we can come together. And
well, it's interesting you say that, because that's one of the things I always appreciated about you and the legal advice you gave me is it's not always about one party winning.
Right.
It's about two parties, two people in a transaction, sometimes more. But let's just say it's two parties in a transaction, and there's a disagreement on, where the comma was placed or how the paragraph was meant and the interpretation of the contract.
Yeah.
Or maybe there wasn't a contract. Maybe there should have been one. And we'll talk about that in a few minutes with how business owners do things in their early businesses. But when two parties can walk away from a transaction feeling maybe like both of them got screwed, it's a weird way of saying it, but it's probably the right thing for both of them. And that's where I think people with this whole COVID virus is they want to feel like they still have independence, that they have the right to be able to choose whether or not to take a vaccine and not be shamed by their community or by the public. I want some time. I want, if you think about the flu vaccine as an example, they praise that the efficiency of the flu vaccine is 50 or 60%.
Right.
And how long has that been on the market? And they don't have a 100% cure rate. The flu is still around. So they want me to go take a vaccine that we've rushed to market.
Yep.
And, now Nuveen or whatever pharmaceutical, I may have even said that wrong. But, they're praising that there's a 95% efficacy or efficiency rate. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. You're going to want me to take a vaccine for something that we're really not sure if it works. We have these small case studies. And I actually heard a guy on Fox a couple of weeks ago, a physician, I can't remember his name, but he was talking about that. He goes, look, it's really a practice. It's a test. We're not sure what the long-term effects are, because in order to see if a vaccine is efficient, we need time. And what's interesting about that is that in business, time is money. We don't have time. You've got to make a decision. You've got to go for it. And this is where this whole COVID crisis, I think, is, for many people, it's teaching us how to be more patient with our business, right?
Yeah.
To really step back and go, all right, let me examine how things are really going to work for my particular business over the long term. So I won't put you on the spot anymore since your family's going to be on you about taking the vaccine.
Right.
I, for one, want to wait a little while before somebody sticks me with a needle of unknown juice.
Yeah. I don't think, what is it, January of when they think it'll be available?
Yeah.
So
and, supposedly it's going to go to the frontline workers first, and then through, probably our military will be the guinea pigs.
Yep.
Those guys who have to stand in line and get pumped full of some serum
Right.
But I'll stop. I sound like a negative Nancy here, but so on the business front, you work with a broad scope of businesses.
Mm-hmm.
In your mind's eye, and maybe just in what you've seen in your practice since March, what industry have you noticed has taken the biggest hit?
Well, I mean, the restaurant industry got slammed.
Yeah.
They've had to adapt, but some of them have. I think in a way, like dental practices and some healthcare providers took a big hit. But
early on, they really took it on the chin.
Yeah, I mean, I don't.
They didn't really know how to treat patients. They weren't sure.
Yeah.
If masks worked, they
Right.
weren't sure if treatment plans and the how communicable or not. What's the word I'm looking for? How dangerous the infection rate was. Like, do I have to be 6 feet away? Do I have to be 20 feet away? How long does it stay on a surface?
But in general, I think certain businesses took a hit, but they've all figured out how to adapt and move forward.
What about the real estate market? What have you seen with like real estate investors, like commercial guys who own these buildings, probably paying a mortgage, having to pay investors?
Yeah.
What have you seen in that market?
Well, the real estate market, in terms of, it hasn't changed, I think, because a lot of those deals, commercial deals, the people that are involved in that business, they have a lot longer view of things. They're not looking a month ahead. I think when COVID hit in March and early spring, everyone was looking, next payroll. Well, the PPP is going to cover payroll for a month and a half. So everyone's looking at, okay, we're going to be home for 2 months, and then we'll be back.
Yeah.
So a lot
14 days to flatten the curve, right?
Yeah. So a lot of these industries,
8 months later,
they're planning for things returning to normal.
Yeah.
And I think the reality is, my approach has been as an advisor is, things might never go back to normal, and that's okay. And that's, you as a business owner just have to adjust to that change of things not being normal.
Adapt and overcome is what we would say in the Marines.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Sorry, my phone's blown up. I need to make sure
Yeah.
Never mind. Make sure
Karen
my
needs you to pick up some milk and cookies for the kids.
Right.
Yeah. Take me back. I remember when you first launched your law practice. I mean, there was risk for you and Gabe in launching a practice, and will people come do business with you? Two young guys,
Right.
pretty fresh out of law school. Not.
Yeah, we were young.
Yeah. Excuse me. But what do you think attributed to the success as you as a business owner? What would you say is a key and great ingredient that you could share with listeners?
Well, I mean, my partner Gabe and myself are almost polar opposites. We end up at the same result in a lot of business decisions, but our approach to it, and people that work with us see this every day, we're just very different.
Yeah.
We just approach things differently. I think that having certain people in business, and like you, some people do better on their own. I don't.
Yeah.
And Gabe doesn't either. I mean, I think the balance that we've had together was early on, and still is, the main key to our success.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so many issues that we've come across with, working with employees where his perspective has just been flat out wrong, or my perspective has been flat out wrong, and we have that counterbalance. And that has been the key to our success. It's that, if I was doing this on my own, I probably wouldn't have gotten to where we are now without, and if the same thing with him. he wouldn't be where he is now if, when he's out getting business, I'm making sure our books are correct, things like that. So,
yeah, it takes a team is basically what you're saying.
And that was our plan in our approach, and it still is our approach to our clients. We as legal advisors don't want to just give one perspective to the client. We want the client to have Gabe's perspective and my perspective, and they're going to potentially be different. And we'll tell you as a business owner up front, we're going to give you these two different viewpoints. Here's two ways you could attack it, and we'll be open and honest with you. And I think that was one of the changes and one of the opportunities that we saw in the legal profession is that, as lawyers, you're sort of trained to look at every variable and find the right answer, and don't give any advice if you're not sure what the right answer is. And we were just like, no, I think that business owners want to have a little bit more honesty come from their counsel, and just, if I don't know, I'm just going to tell you I don't know. Yeah. I'm not sure. You and I have sat with some clients, and I've said, there's 5 cases that are sort of on point, but that doesn't mean that you can't get sued. That anyone can file a lawsuit in this country. And
well, that's what I was just thinking is that, I think, again, people want to have choice. People want to have independence. And so if, as a legal expert, if you can come to them with, here's my opinion, here's of all these things that are optional, we can kind of throw away this on the left and throw away this on the right, but there still may be 2 or 3 different ways to go about it. And I think we can see in case law, right, that there's not always the right opinion. And that's why you have to go back and look at, well, what do we have as, what do you call it, precedents?
Yep.
When we go back and look at the code and then look at how a judge interpreted that code or that statute, to be able to have an idea of what the forthcoming, or what, if you end up in court, what the next judge is going to say to you as in your business transaction or your business dealings. But there are some things in law that are pretty black and white, and let's talk about those for a few minutes, like the structure of a business. Now, the structure of a business, what are the basic different structures that you can see that a person could choose and how they set up the legal entity?
Right. So, yeah, and a lot of people are like, why do we have legal entities? What's the need for an entity? I'm going to start a lawn mowing business. I just get a lawnmower and people pay me cash and I go out there and do it. But really it's the idea of a legal entity, and they describe it in law school, an LLC, corporation, partnership. It's the way that it's explained. It's like a person, but it's not alive. Doesn't have a pulse. But it's just like you and I have Social Security numbers, a corporation has an employment identification number. And the purpose of a legal entity really is just to protect the business owner from risk, and also to create something that is sustainable and can pass on and isn't entirely dependent on your pulse. So when my pulse stops, Pierce McCoy, the legal entity, the law firm, continues. Yeah. So you can build wealth, you can build, prosperity for a lot of people, and so the basic legal structures are sole proprietorship, which is just an individual, a partnership, which is 2 individuals.
And a sole proprietorship means just that, right? Can only be one person.
It's just the person. Yeah. Right.
They could be doing business as ABC Lawn Care.
Yep.
But it's them as an individual with no corporate structure.
When that person dies, the business dies, basically.
And their income comes to them through a Schedule C on their tax return, typically?
They can report it that way, yeah. They can report it that way, or they can just report it as gross income. if someone's operating as a sole proprietorship, my guess is they're probably not thinking much about how they're reporting their income on their tax return.
Right.
Anyway,
it may not be showing up there as maybe a thought.
Maybe it's not showing up there, or
Yeah.
maybe it's not correct. But then you also have just you can have a general partnership, which is just any two or more individuals that are carrying out a business seeking profit. It's the legal definition.
Yeah.
And in that case, the partners are liable for the full debts of the partnership. So if we're in a partnership together and I go out and incur liability, you're jointly and severally liable for that individually. And then, the two legal entities are the two main types of entities that everyone uses are LLCs and corporations.
LLC being a limited liability company.
A limited liability company, and then a corporation. And the distinction is you can structure them to basically operate very similarly. The distinction is in the LLC. There's one layer less of managerial hierarchy in an LLC by default. So an LLC has members, which are the owners, and then it has, if you appoint, if you're a manager-managed entity, you have a manager.
Okay.
In a corporation, you have three levels. You have shareholders, then you have directors, and you have officers. It just provides an additional, like by default. These are just the default rules.
Yeah.
We can take
Peel
one
that onion
concept
way back,
in,
yeah.
and we can really get creative with the.
So you could be an LLC, but take a S election and act like a corporation, even though you're not.
Yep.
Why would a person do that?
Be an LLC with
then take a S election.
Well, there's not they'll take an S election to be just treated as like a pass-through entity, and with an S election, you can pay yourself W-2 wages, and then you don't pay self-employment income, self-employment tax on the flow-through income.
Right.
So you could take a salary of let's say you take a salary of $100,000 a year, but then you have another $100,000 in profit that you get, and you get the 199A 20% tax deduction on that.
Yeah.
Income as well.
Do you see with our new president-elect, if he makes it in the office and passes muster and all the votes are counted and president-elect becomes President Biden, what's the tea leaves tell you? What do you think is going to happen with income tax?
Well, I mean, definitely next year I wouldn't really anticipate anything happening.
Yeah.
I think everything will stay the same. Nothing's going to change for 2020. I don't think anyone's planning for any change next year. I think everyone's looking at 2022 or actually subsequently 2023 there being a tax planning change.
Well, the Trump Tax Act that was put in place and that's subject to change December 31st of 2025.
Yep.
If Congress doesn't,
Yeah.
push it through as a permanent tax cut. So when you have significant amounts of money that's been dumped back into the economy, dumped back into the individual taxpayers' hands in the form of relief, like the CARES Act and PPP, somebody's got to pay that in the future. That's got to come back. Either our GDP or gross domestic product just has to skyrocket, and business just has to just flourish, or we've got to change some internal structure in our government in how we collect taxes or how we spend money. I mean, that's really all the federal government can do, right, is they can manipulate those two things at a macro view, change the tax rate or change the spending, their cash flow,
Right.
how much they're spending of the money they're collecting. Right now, we're in a net negative. This year alone, I think we're going to push I don't think we're going to get any more stimulus passed, but maybe, let's say, $4 trillion, $6 trillion of stimulus added on top of our current debt. In your mind's eye, do you think income taxes in the future Do you think they're going up, going down, or staying the same?
Well, I think this is maybe more of a philosophical question than a legal question, but
the black box. We take
yeah,
it
no.
everywhere. We're all over the place.
But I'm actually interested in this issue because, I think a lot of times we think of the government like that it has to have a household budget like you and I do.
Yeah.
And if you think of the government as a household, that's where you see, the Paul Ryan tax plan, where we've got to cut back, we've got to cut our entitlements, we've got to cut our budgets down to zero, and I think actually, like, they call that like austerity measures.
Yeah, right.
And if I think of it that way, in terms of policy, it might seem counterintuitive, but just approach it from the business owner perspective.
Yeah.
Of, interest rates now are the lowest we've ever seen. I remember I got a mortgage at, I think, 4.5% in 2009, and I thought I was like stealing.
Yeah. And
now you're seeing low 3s, 2s even on.
We had a client close at like 2.98 with their mortgage broker.
And as someone that represents business owners and businesses, I've seen people create really, really lasting wealth by someone investing in them.
Yeah.
And I think with interest rates the way they are now, it's almost like now's the time to invest in our society. Now's the time to make investments, past things like PP. I mean, the PPP program saved so many businesses that were probably right on the edge. And then those entrepreneurs have now made their businesses more sustainable. They've invested in their people. They've started podcasts.
Yeah.
Like that. I think now's a great time to really just make investments in the future. And that's where it's, I think you can take the conservative mindset of like, oh, let's cut taxes, let's peel back our spending. But I think it's also, the conservative approach is also invest in people. Like now's the best time to invest in people.
Nat, if my personal income tax rate goes up, theoretically, don't I have less to invest?
Yeah, you do.
So,
and the question is, what is that income tax being spent on?
Yeah.
Is it being spent on programs that are going to grow businesses, like the PPP loan, I think, did?
Yeah.
And that's why we have elections and vote to put the people we want.
So we've heard all kinds of different things come from different policymakers, from like the Green New Deal, and we're gonna get off fossil fuels and go into all these sustainable non-fossil fuel type energies, to seeing things change at our local government, to the federal government, like Medicare for all. Excuse me. And there really is a balance that could be struck there. Do you have any hope of seeing that some of the things that are coming down the pike from new policymakers, what do you see coming for business owners? If you're looking at your tea leaves, what do you see coming for a business owner? What should they be thinking about in 2022, late 20, or maybe thinking about it in 2021 in preparation for 2022, 2023?
I mean, I think it's sustainability. Like, how do you ensure that your business is sustainable, that it can withstand things that are unexpected, that if one of the business owners dies, what happens? Who's
life insurance?
Yeah, who's next in line to take things over? And because what I do see as a lawyer is when people fail to plan, when someone comes in to pick up the pieces, the result is typically not what the person might have wanted. So I've represented plenty of children fighting over their parents' stuff because the parents failed to come up with, a
Give them
plan,
instructions, right?
Give them instructions and talk to them about it.
Yeah.
So that's going to put one or two of my kids through college. It's just helping people navigate through
That's a good point.
poor planning.
Yeah. Yeah, the poorer their plan is, the more enriched attorneys become, right?
Right. Yeah.
So what you're saying to your clients then, and what you're saying to prospective clients who may be listening to this podcast today is, without a plan, you're planning to fail.
Right.
So be strategic in that you think about those known knowns as much as you think about the unknown knowns, those things that you don't know that are out there. It's usually the flanks. It's usually the things we don't see coming that can kill us or hurt us. And I can remember in a transaction we were in on this packaging company, there was a little clause in our contract that was really my death knell, right? In that business, whereas I think it was called an estoppel clause, that they basically said, hey, if anything is going to kill the mothership, we can come in and take you out and change the rules on you, And so those little things that you think don't matter are the things that I think Benjamin Franklin said it's the small holes in a ship that will sink it. And so looking for that in terms of risk, I think about every year, where you represent a couple of my entities, or your firm does, you'll send out a notice each year saying, hey, I got to pay my registered agent fees, but you also send out a document along with that to ask me questions about, have there been any changes? And how many people just send those back to you and go, nah, we don't need to talk about that? And
yeah, there's probably 95% of them come back with nothing.
Wow.
So it's which is interesting because, and it'll be very interesting this year, and maybe we'll try to change the way we do it to see if people actually respond, because you kind of got to call BS on it because
nothing changed in your business.
Nothing happened over a course of a year, nothing at all. And some people aren't responding because they work with us on a regular basis.
Yeah.
But that's a really interesting question of what is it going to look like this year? Who got a PPP loan? Who got an EIDL loan? I'm working on a very interesting issue right now where someone got an EIDL loan, a sizable EIDL loan, and then got an offer from someone to buy their business, and they want to sell their business to this person, but they don't want to pay their EIDL loan off because it was such a favor. It's 3.25% over 30 years, but the EIDL loan has a lien on all their assets, so they can't sell their assets without getting SBA approval, and the SBA is not going to approve the sale without getting the loan paid off.
Right.
Paid off. So it's
they can't assign it?
Well, we're going to try to swap out the assets for another set of assets. For another bit for assets in another business, but we'll see what they say. It'll be interesting.
So that brings up another question for folks. If you own a business and now you've got this succession plan, how do I move to this next phase? Or maybe you're just tired of being in business. There's a few different ways that you can structure a sell of a business. Help our audience understand that that nuance, that it's not as let's say this cup is my business.
Yeah,
I could sell you the cup, or I could sell you what's inside the cup. There's a number of different ways to peel that onion back. So
yeah, well, and I think a lot of business owners will have a plan going in, like, hey, I'm gonna start this company, scale it, and then sell it, scale it, or take on investment. Yeah. I'm going to start this company, and then I'm going to give it away to my successor, so someone I'm going to mentor. Yeah. So I think having a plan going in, or having an idea of what you're going to do going in, can help with how you structure it. so that you don't find yourself in a scenario of like you took a loan that prevents you from selling the business, like my friend, my friend that I'm trying to help.
Yeah.
But
how many people did that? I mean, when you either take the loan or
Yeah.
die, right? The business dies. So at the time he took the loan, if he would have known that he was going to sell it later, do you think he would have done anything different?
he wouldn't have taken the loan.
Really?
Yeah, probably not.
Interesting.
Yeah, because he's gonna basically he got the loan, but he spent the loan on staying open, basically.
Yeah.
But the amount of the loan makes it so that if he sells his business now, he basically nets zero.
Oh, geez.
So he's trying to.
So he got his own equity out of the business, spent it.
Yeah, basically, spend it on staying open.
Yeah.
So I think knowing what your ultimate plan is for a business can allow you to make wise decisions. I'm representing another former employee of a business who was promised stock in a company, and they never delivered the stock to him, and subsequently fired him because he kept asking for his stock in the company, and they never delivered the stock to him because they didn't know how they were going to give him the stock because he was going to be taxed on it and how we were going to structure it, and they couldn't come to an agreement on how he was supposed to get the stock. And you see a lot of times you see people that they just didn't have a cohesive plan. They had an idea, like I'm going to, this guy's going to be the successor to my business, but they don't have a tangible plan in place to get there. And it's not rocket science to do this. It's more of just being willing to have the conversation.
Yeah.
Those 95% of surveys that come back unanswered, like nothing happened. It's because I think we have a tendency when it comes to these issues, just like with estate planning, you have a tendency to not want to think about it.
Yeah.
We have a tendency to not want to think about death, but we're all going to die.
Yeah.
So it's, not to be morbid with it. It's just with a business, there's issues that you should address and should just think through.
Yeah. I think that's good advice. So if a person wants to have these conversations with a law firm such as yours, you guys do something that I've always found unique to how most legal professionals work with their clients, is that you don't want to inhibit an entrepreneur from going into business because of legal costs. And sometimes people will not do the right thing because they're afraid of the cost. So you guys have a program that you use that allows the client to pay a retainer over time, and you'll do the work up front.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah, and this was foundational to our business and how we decided to start our firm. We were so young at the time. We wanted to offer something different, and we wanted to really commit to our clients. And a lot of lawyers typically operate of you pay them the money up front before they've done anything.
Yeah.
They put it in an escrow account, and then they bill against the escrow account. When the escrow account hits zero,
They send you another bill.
they send you another bill asking for more money. And we said, no, we want to put the client relationship first. Why don't we? Every business has legal needs. You can't say that there aren't any legal issues in your business. It's an untrue statement.
Right.
So just like any budget, the business owner should budget for having certain legal issues addressed. So we just decided, okay, let's try to break down the barrier of I had a conversation with a business owner a couple weeks ago, and I said, what's the main impediment to picking up the phone and giving me a call? And he said he thinks that a lot of times it's just fear of the unknown. You don't want to pick up that phone because you don't know what the answer is going to be, and you're scared to know what the answer might be. So yeah, we call it a representation retainer plan, and we'll give an upfront credit for 6 months of monthly payments. For anywhere from $250 a month. We have clients that pay us thousands of dollars a month for our availability. But we'll do it on a project basis too. So if you're selling your business, you just sign up for that, and then the cost is spread over time rather than all at once. And it helps. Like I said, I think what's going to come out of this is businesses are going to want to be more sustainable.
Seems like it would help manage cash flows for an individual too, who may be feeling like they're hemorrhaging money, right at the front of their business. Right at the start.
One of my clients, we have a client that's had multiple restaurants, and at the start of the pandemic, I called him and just said, "Look, we're going to stop your payments. You don't need to pay us the next 2 months." And then he still had a lot of work. We had to let go and furlough 90 employees, help him with his PPP loan, do some other restructuring, deal with some other employment issues. So what we were able to do with him is we were able to set up a payment plan out 24 months because he's been with us for a long time. And
yeah, that's awesome.
Really allow him to get his feet back under him, and in the meantime, help his business when he needed it most, as well. And I think he'll return and be fine now.
Yeah, that's great. That's great that you take an interest in your clients that way to try to come alongside of them and still be a legal expert, but also a friend.
Right.
That's unusual. So I appreciate that about you. We're running short on time today, and I've got to go do a workshop and talk to people about exciting stuff like tax and their retirement plans. But, one of the things a lot of people probably don't know about you, Nat, is that you're a pretty good lacrosse player.
Right.
And you played lacrosse at a pretty high level. I actually remember early days of Pierce McCoy. You went and played lacrosse for the national team in Norway, right? They're Norwegians.
Yeah, Norway.
Yeah, because you're Mexican, right? Yeah, you've got that blonde hair, blue eye look. So tell us a little bit about that. Where did lacrosse enter into the picture?
Yeah, lacrosse has been. They call it the creator's game. It's Native American, so it's I've as a believer, I've sort of always had lacrosse as just something that's opened doors for me everywhere. I've been able to coach kids. I've been able to play kind of at a professional level, at a collegiate level. Throughout my life, it's just opened countless doors. I've played all over the world.
Yeah.
I've gotten to travel a ton just to play, this sport that I think that there's a spiritual aspect to lacrosse. And I think a lot of people that have played sports would say that about it. But for me, it's been, that maybe that it's an escape. And, it's getting harder at 38 years old to get out there. The summer league was canceled this year, but I typically play in the summer league here in Virginia Beach, and it's pretty tough when you have Division I college athletes,
young dudes coming out,
and it gives you
great shape.
It gives me a lot of respect for the Frank Gores and the guys that you still see in the NFL in their late 30s that are out there because our bodies don't maintain, but. I'm gonna start. I'm gonna start coaching at Norfolk Christian, and I'm really excited about that. A buddy of mine that I was in college with is the executive director of Fellowship of Christian Athletes Lacrosse up in Maryland, and they've developed just a great brand. And FCA is how I ended up going to Messiah College. I was looking at a couple D1 schools, and when I was coming out of high school, I was looking at maybe doing a PG year to try to get into some better schools. And I went to play in an FCA tournament, met a bunch of Christian guys that all decided to go to Messiah. And we made a pretty good run at it my senior year. We were 5th in the country at one point.
Wow.
Had a couple bad breaks in the NCAA tournament, but those relationships that I made on that team, have helped me. And what I'm doing with FCA is there's no local club for FCA lacrosse, so we're going to start at Norfolk Christian, and we're going to try to. Lacrosse is increasingly becoming a multiracial. I think a lot of people always thought of it as a private school. White
forget
kids.
That Jim Brown was better at lacrosse
Jim Brown
than
was
football. Right?
At Syracuse, he was like All-American, and it's a great opportunity. And where Norfolk Christian is located, I think that it's a place that we can really provide some opportunities. And I feel very confident that I've been around the game long enough that I can sit down with parents of a kid and say, if you put your kid in a program from, let's say, 9th grade to 12th grade, I can get him into a 4-year college to play lacrosse.
Wow.
And I don't think you can say that for football or basketball or baseball even. But, I think lacrosse, it's grown so much, but there's still plenty of opportunity for and going into a community like Norfolk and being able to offer that to that community. My hope, I'm excited about it. I think it's going to.
That's awesome. I'll have to stay tuned for that and hear more about what FCA is doing.
Norfolk Christian's got a great facility. They got a weight room that's basically like a college-level weight room, a great field and everything. So I'm excited to.
That's very cool.
We had a little bit of a go at it in the spring and then got shut down. So it's given us
COVID again.
It's given us a year to plan everything.
Well, that's awesome. So if someone wants to have a conversation with you about their business needs, their legal business needs, how can they find you?
PierceMcCoy.com is our website.
Spell Pierce because most people like me don't spell well.
Yeah,
so.
PIERCEMCCOY.com, or just email me, nat@piercemccoy.com.
Okay.
Or get in contact with you. And
we'll put your site up on the show. And I always ask folks, I've got 3 of my favorite books here on the table that I always keep out that I think are necessary for people to read. One, Jack Canfield, The Success Principles. Love that book. If you like investments, Benjamin Graham's Intelligent Investor.
Right.
And then one of my all-time favorites is Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, which is really just a mindset, If you don't mind, it don't matter kind of mentality. And that's how most successful people who've had uber success has been just this driving vision of don't quit, don't fail. You're not going to fail if you don't quit. You might fall. You might have some trip-ups. You might have some legal issues. But it's a great book that I would suggest people read. And I always like to ask my guests, favorite book, what are you reading now? What would you tell people to go read other than the Internal Revenue Code or the Business Code?
Right.
Like you had to read in college.
Yeah.
What's a great read you have right now?
I'm trying to think. Well, I've always liked he's a Christian author, but he's not Christian enough to be considered a Christian author, and not secular enough to be considered a secular author. And his name's Frederick Buechner.
Frederick
Buechner.
Buechner.
Beuchner. Okay.
What did he write?
He's written a bunch of fiction books, and he's written a bunch of nonfiction books. I'm trying to blank on the title. Anyway,
we got the fact checkers over here. They'll find something for us in a sec here that he's
but he has some a really good devotional book, which is just like short little snippets, which is collections of different writings that he's got.
Did you find it, guys?
I'll look it up right now.
Okay. So, like a devotional book, can you get them on like Amazon?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And he's great. And then also, like, I did probably 2 years ago. I read the Bible straight through chronologically. And I had never done that. You know, I grew up in the church, and you hear a Bible verse, and it just doesn't really hit you because you heard it a million times.
Right.
But when I just actually read the Bible as like a story, as if, you know, I had never looked at it before, that, you know, really just changed my...
So you'd recommend people give that a shot, huh?
Yeah.
Do that. I have to admit, I've never read the Bible like from page 1 to Revelation.
And then I guess, you know, I would be remiss not to shout out to my good friend Peter Greer, who wrote a book called Mission Drift, which is about how organizations change their mission over time or get away from their mission.
Yeah.
He starts out by talking about how, you know, Yale University and the YMCA started out as Christian organizations. And, you know, now you wouldn't even think that that's the case. But Yale was supposed to educate people in, you know.
Do you think YMCA is going to get canceled one day? They're going to change their name?
Yeah. Speaking of businesses that got hit hard, gyms.
Yeah, gyms just got crushed, right?
Yeah, they have.
So Peter Greer, Greer?
Peter Greer, Greer.
And the name of that book, Mission Drift?
Mission Drift, yep.
Yeah, we'll have to give him a shout out. We'll put it up on the site and give people link backs where they can go check those out. And obviously the Bible. Who's the author of the Bible?
There's a lot of flawed people apparently.
That right. Which is encouraging because, you know, God can use any vessel at any stage of their life.
Yeah.
And they can be great authors to prove that.
Yeah.
You know, that Holy Scripture that we're able to use as a guideline for how we live our lives, to how we run our businesses. So, yeah. Check out Proverbs if you want to think about it as a good businessman. One of the richest men to ever live, King Solomon.
Right.
And he dropped some pretty amazing wisdom on us in that book. So.
Right.
But reading it chronologically.
Reading it as a story is, you know, as...
Man, what did you do when you got to, was it Numbers, when they just so-and-so beget so-and-so who beget so...
Just read.
You didn't skip a few pages in that area?
No,
God's listening.
I read it. I just read it through. I mean, maybe I glossed over a couple, you know, Jehoshaphat's.
But you read the law, so you're used to just reading boring stuff. And
right. When you read for a living, you know, it can be interesting.
Wow. Well, hey, dude, thanks for coming on the show, and I appreciate you as an individual. You're one of the most level-headed counselors that I've ever had to deal with, and I really appreciate that in you, that you don't get too excited or too worked up over anything. You just got a great even spirit, which crazy guys like me, it's good to have somebody to balance you out. Yeah. So thanks for being on the show with us today, and we'll have you back in the future. Maybe we get Gabe on here and talk about baseball and law.
Yeah, get him. Get him. Get Josh Pierce would be
good.
Guess he's down in Texas now.
Is he really?
Yeah.
What part of Texas?
He's in Austin.
Oh.
Yeah, we opened an office down there. So
no kidding.
Yep.
All right, so where are your offices at now?
Yeah, so we've got one in New York. We actually just moved it. We moved it to outside Penn Station, kind of midtown.
Wow.
And we got two attorneys up there, and then we got Josh Pierce down in Austin. And we have another guy that just joined us with him. And then we have...
He can get on Joe Rogan's show now down in Austin.
Oh, yeah.
Joe moved down in that neck of the woods. So.
And then we got an office in Richmond, right off Broad Street up there. We waited to do Richmond because we wanted to have the other offices established first. But we got 3 people up in Richmond right now.
Wow.
As well. So we're slowly... expanding outside of the area, and a lot of my work's been outside of the area as well, so we're not tied down to Virginia Beach.
I've been doing a lot of work in Nashville with my accounting buddy Randy. We need to get you a space out there.
I've never been to Nashville. I hear great things.
It's a great city.
One of my best friends from college coaches down there.
I'll be there for 5 days coming up here in the next right after Thanksgiving. So
right.
I'll tell you, go to Biscuit Love.
Yep.
In Nashville, if you want a really good breakfast, or any time of day, they serve amazing food there. Bourbon steak, it's in the top of the Marriott in 8th Street in downtown Nashville. My buddy Randy's a member of the registry there, which is just open, and it's a club.
I think there's a guy. You ever heard of Jeremy Cowart? He's a photographer. He's starting this thing called the Purpose Hotel in Nashville.
Really? I
Yeah,
have to check it out.
It's supposed to be awesome. I don't know if he's gotten it underway yet.
Hotel. Okay.
But
Well, cool. Well, man, God bless you. Thanks for coming in and hanging out with me today and sharing some wisdom with us.
Well,
We appreciate it. And we'll make sure people know how to get to you on our website and give you a call if they want some expert legal advice.
right. Well, appreciate it. Thanks.
Thanks, man.
Yep.